As well as online.
All right, gentlemen, it is 35 minutes after the hour is 7 o'clock. On the line, I do have Mr. Derek Chin. Good morning to you, Mr. Chin.
Good morning.
Morning, of course.
Hi.
Welcome to the Power Breakfast Show on Power 102 Digital. Of course, we have Richard Raghubar saying Wendell Stephen, and of course, Paul Richards with me this morning.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Nice
and
to be
thank you
on.
for taking the call.
Mr.
I know you're very busy, so let's get straight into it.
Yes,
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chen. Thanks for joining us on the Power Breakfast Show this morning. And
thank
of
you.
course,
Well, I was away for a while. I only came back in early yesterday,
Hmm.
so that's why you haven't heard from me. Because I obviously I know you're calling me about the issue with MovieTown and the port.
yeah.
So
Yes.
this is my first opportunity to actually say anything publicly.
All right. Well, thank you.
Wonderful.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, guys.
So is the issue at this point resolved to some degree? I know that MovieTown would have paid the $3 million by the deadline that was indicated by the court, which I think was the 28th of August. What is the current status?
Well, as you know, let's go back to the idea of re-entering MovieTown, which, as the attorneys and you'll see, nothing has closed down. That re-entry was considered very illegal, and I'll go into that a little bit later. But as it stands right now, MovieTown continues to operate as normal. We are still the owners and the landlords. The topics of the port have been all about bullying and taking advantage of a situation that they know very well that has been going on as late as of July this year. So if you're in matters are in the court and the matters have been in discussion and correspondences going on a week to week basis in recent times, then you don't just all of a sudden re-enter and talk about taking over and determining leases. As it stands right now, we got an injunction where the $3 million was placed as part of our arrangement with the judge. The judge said that the court cannot contact or be in contact with any of our tenants. Right? I think you're all aware of that. And the tenants were told they have to deal with us, meaning MovieTown. And secondly, that they have to not interfere with the operations of MovieTown to prevent anything from happening and so on and so forth. Well, they continue to defy that and break the law. And I'm meeting actually today with the police to say, listen, I have an order here, which is an order from Justice Honeywell. And basically all the requirements, whether it's the $3 million payment in advance as part of our arrangement, but the other parts, meaning occupying the premises and preventing my officers and my staff from being able to do and conduct business, is a contravention of this particular order. And why it is that they can continue illegally. I mean, I think an order is a law. So that is one of the big issues. I'm asking the police to intervene and ask them not to block the use of our offices. They've now said, okay, you can open from 8 to 4. But MovieTown is a 24-hour, 7-day business. It doesn't close. We have movies that go out till 11 o'clock. We have events that take place at the banquet center. We have weddings. And they are still occupying and preventing based on that injunction. So that's my biggest issue to deal with today, to ask the police if they could intervene and tell the port that they are acting illegally and they're contravening the order by Justice Honeywell.
But
And
Mr. Chen,
is concerned. Yes.
yeah. What would have caused this action in the first place? Because this surely wasn't an overnight thing. Was there some sort of negotiations taking place prior to bring it to that action?
Very good question and very good observation. When you deal with the port, when you write a letter, you have to wait about 4 months to get a response. So when they talk about it taking so long, we have been trying to organize and pay off whatever arrears there have been. But one of the problems with this 5-year renewal process is that they have to get a valuation. And just after COVID, we got a valuation and we paid. We said we agreed to the valuation done by Farrell. Only to find out because of COVID, and when we started to look at the numbers and try to make things tight, because obviously we were closed for business and so on, we realized that the Farrell report was flawed. That it's not they based it on raw land, which is what we are renting from the port, but they put all the buildings, like if they built the buildings, into the valuation so that the cost per square foot now skyrocketed. And we said, gentlemen, we are willing to pay on the raw land as stipulated in the lease, right? You have not done so. And therefore, this valuation is flawed. So we cannot accept it. We need to get other valuations and come up with what would be a realistic valuation on the raw land that we are leasing from you. They continue to deny that. And in contravention of the lease, and I'm not talking about me making this up, in contravention of the lease, they continue to put a higher valuation than should be because of adding in the buildings that were built by MovieTown and nothing to do with any investment from the port. And therefore, the rate became very high, which we would have to pass on to the tenants, and the tenants can't pay because that would show their rents probably about 40 to 50% higher. Even today, they can't pay the lower rent that we had from before. So that was one of the issues. Then we went into the negotiation, trying to come to some sort of settlement. We did so as of July of this year, when I met with the chairman, Mr. Alexander, on his invitation. I met with my team, and my team. And we said, okay, we will agree to pay the undisputed amount, which is, they claim is 10 million, but we said, no, it's not, because of that flawed valuation. And we made an offer of $6 million. Even if you look at 10 million as accepted amount, we offered them 6 million, and to keep the rate as is until we go to the court and finalize if the valuation is flawed or not. Right? This is of July of this year. Then they said out of a handshake and agreement and three hours of meetings and having a lunch and everything else, we shook hands and we left. We've provided the draft with the offer of the $6 million and to keep the rate at $194,000 per month, right? Which is what we've been paying. This is even without the concessions for COVID. So the next 2 or 3 days, strange enough, they responded, which is very out of no ordinary. I tell you, they usually respond 3 to 4 months after. They rejected it. I said, but no reason. We just rejected it. I said, well, I mean, we were very taken surprised because we felt that was a very generous offer in settling this matter. Then they said, okay, we want to go to arbitration. I said, okay, we will go to arbitration. We selected a gentleman named Justice Mandonza. Within 3 days, because we had to wait for them to respond. And they said, oh, you haven't responded. We have Justice Stolmeyer, but why have you responded? I said, it's only 3 days. You have to give the man a chance to say yes or no, which he did, and we have that in writing. Then on July the 22nd, right, they came back and said, okay, we decided not to go the arbitration route as stipulated in the lease and matters like this. We will go to the High Court, which we had also recommended, that arbitration takes a long time and it also is a little more costly. So they came back and said, okay, well, we agree with your suggestion of going to the court, and we have that detailed and in writing. On July the 22nd, they came back and said, okay, they will go to the court. On July the 23rd, they entered MovieTown. Not even a day. They entered MovieTown and said, we want to determine the lease and we want to, use the re-entry process, which is again against the law. The law and the courts don't take that kindly because we are in the middle of discussions, middle of settlements, and you have re-entry is usually the last resort, right? And that is what has happened to date.
Mr. Chin, good morning. How much had this affected business on that weekend of the 23rd, and has business still been impacted by that?
Well, I would say, we are coming into the last week before school, so it's still holding. I mean, the place is still very busy. I would say that people don't really understand all that went on. They see these numbers and these things in the papers. But the most damaging thing to us is our reputation, because I have spent my lifetime building this place from 22 years and trying to create an environment that is positive, unlike the rest of the country. Right? So I would say it's embarrassing to me. As I said, I wasn't here at the time. It's embarrassing to MovieTown that has created one of the bright beacons of this country's development. And instead of sitting down and trying to help and build something that is very good, all we get is a tax one on top of each other.
What,
You know,
one of the other issues that arose, Mr. Chin, even before this, because we spoke to you during the COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown, and you would have indicated that the MovieTown management had a serious challenge financially, as many other businesses. But recently, even before this, we would have seen in the newspapers yourself, well, the MovieTown complex having owed the state $93 million. Is that accurate?
Right. No, we have already filed our objections. We have negotiated with the BIR, who has helped us in a way to start to make payments towards or some sort of settlement schedule, which we have done. But we have obviously the 93 million, of which 6 or something million is the interest alone. The amount is more. The amount has to be contested, which we have shown them. Yes, we were guilty in terms of not filing our returns, but we're talking about a period of 20 years at least. My biggest issue was the fact that when I built or was about to build MovieTown, I got concessions in taxes. I got a 7-day reduction in tax, 50% off the annual rate under the Tourism Act of 2000, right? When I claimed and submitted those returns, I submitted it at 17%. It was half of 34%. What happened then was they did not accept it because they didn't have the sort of relationship with the tourism board that these things weren't put into order from the tourism side, although I have it in writing. So when I submitted 17%, they rejected it. I said, well, until you all get your act together with left hand and right hand on the same page, I'm not sending in any returns. Why must I pay 50% more of a concession I got to build MovieTown?
But put a pause. What you just clarified a lot there. You said that
Yes.
of the 93 million, 60 million was interest, which means there was like $30 million owed or so in taxes. How long does that represent in taxes not being paid out of MovieTown's 21-year history?
What I told you that when you compound the outstanding amount, it 60-something million, of the 90 million was what was interest and penalty, right? So we were guilty of not paying anything because of what I just mentioned. Of course, when you went on to the latter years and so on and so forth, you know, we realized due to whatever, I never knew that my accountants didn't pay the tax returns. I said, well, you all are guilty of that, and we accepted that. So we went back down and negotiated with the BIR a payment schedule, and then also started to put in the objections. If we don't mind paying the taxes, we want to pay the correct taxes, and that's where we are at the moment.
How do you respond to persons who say, because a lot of persons have responded to that, and you're explaining a lot this morning, thank you for that they were objections. But when you say, well, my accountants weren't paying the taxes, and you have a 21-year history, even with the machinations you identified, persons are saying, well, you're expanded in Guyana, you're expanding into other areas of Trinidad and Tobago, but your accountants are not paying the taxes. Doesn't sound like proper business practice.
Right. I agree with that. I mean, those accountants are no longer with us many years ago, so the work to get clearing up all this matter took time. But there is an issue where the corporate tax part of it was, we were delinquent, and I admitted that. So we went back and apologized and said, listen, this happened and that happened, but let us get together and sort it out and start to do exactly that. They said they're not interested in closing down MovieTown or anything like that, but obviously they would like corporations to pay their taxes. And I said, I agree. I mean, I'm embarrassed by the fact that the people I had given that job to do didn't do it. And we had to go back and find and search over the 20 years, go into all the archives and start to find returns that were prepared but never submitted. So it was sort of something that we've dealt with and we are continuing to deal with. And hopefully we can come to some sort of restitution and solve this problem. So it's a matter that happened, and we obviously were embarrassed about it.
Yeah, Mr. Chin, I think it takes a big man, and I respect you for that, for at least admitting this morning that you were wrong, you all were wrong, and you all are making amends to correct it. But how do you see the future of MovieTown? Because I mean, let's face it, MovieTown is a gem. You've done wonderful work down there, right? A lot of people enjoy the facility and so on. How do you see the rebuilding of that relationship with the authorities and moving forward in what you plan to do down there?
Thank you very much. And yes, I'm glad I've gotten some sort of appreciation. But I think the public, the people of Trinidad and Tobago recognize what it was. We took a place that was really swampy underwater, and nobody wanted it. And the first piece of land that we got negotiated then with the previous chairman was the land that is known as the Spectrum, which was already concreted, or what you call asphalted, and a flat land, and they were having parties and all sorts of things under Mr. Monroe. We had negotiated that, and at the last minute they said, "Oh, we don't think we want to do it anymore. It's the only piece of land we have west of the port," and they reneged. So what was left was this swampy little area, right? Which was, as I said, nobody was interested in it. It was part of the reclamation process. All the debris and stuff was passed on there, and then the water from the stadium was sort of drained into that. And as I said, it was not a very nice place. So that was all I had. And I said, well, boy, having negotiated for the Spectrum and spent money and tried to buy out the previous people, Mr. Monroe and so on, what do I get? They said, all you have left is 6 years. And no bank would lend me any money to build any MovieTown with only 6 years left on that existing lease. So Mr. Isaac McLeod was the then chairman, a very nice guy, and he understood and he saw my pain. He said, Derek, all I could offer you is that piece we have, which is where you are now. It's 10 acres, but as is. All I could give you, because the board says, well, they want to hold on to now the Spectrum. Well, you see what the Spectrum is still to this day. It's a big car park. There's no money, nothing on it, right? And what we have done 20 years after is MovieTown next door to it. You all compare the two, right? What is the value of that land? Well, it still has never earned any money for anybody, or the government for that matter. But MovieTown has been paying millions and millions of dollars. I'm trying to calculate how much money I've paid over the 22 years to the port, right? And then they come and say, well, we owe them $10 million. I'm sure we must have paid over $100 million already over the 22 years. And they talk about $10 million, which is
well, as you said, they acted, and unfortunately it ended up in a public spat. No one can discount them. I think I endorse what Wendell has said is that I think no one can deny that the investment of time and your effort and energy and your team in developing that area has added tremendously to the life of Trinidad and Tobago. Were you surprised when the issue of your tax arrears became public?
Yes, I was, because we never really was brought up. We were so busy running and dealing with MovieTown because it's growing and all the pressures and stuff of that, as I said, was an oversight that I was very embarrassed about. Is that how could this happen? I mean, I didn't even consider. I'm not a person that deals with the taxes side, and the accountants would do their job, come to the board, present the financials, but they never brought up the issue that we are in arrears for tax. And then again, the acknowledgement from the BIR was something that I never saw.
That sounds strange from a company perspective. Accountants in company environments present audited financials on a regular basis, in many cases in companies on an annual basis.
Yes.
So to hear that a board of directors or a team of managers is not looking at financials and asking questions about tax liabilities, ongoing concerns, profit and loss is very strange to hear from an operation of that size. That sounds very strange to me. And I'm sure people listening, it sounds very strange to them in terms of governance of an organization of that size.
Okay, a lot of the years going through, I think one of the councils felt that there was a big serious problem because there were a lot of years that were lost years, especially during the COVID era, which is more recent times. But you're right. I mean, I said, but how come I never saw an assessment? How come I never saw? And there were times when MovieTown was very, very financially in trouble, and that's why my accountants didn't want to bring the true picture. But we did have monthly meetings, and as I said, I was surprised that we never really tackled the annual return situation. I mean, all the VAT and everything have been paid. That's the things that we deal with on PAYEs and so on. That's all up to date. But in terms of the actual financials, meaning the annual return, was where I think we were delinquent, And that is, as I said, the time to go back now and deal with it is what took time, because it's a long time. We're talking from 2004 onwards, And again, the issue about not having getting the concession was also a reason why those returns didn't come in, and again, things just went on. And and we reached a stage when we were told by the board that, listen, you fellas have this kind of money owed to us, and of course we didn't say, well, too bad. We started to hire new people and bring in. You can see if you want to check what accounting firms now to try and clean up the act, and that's where we are.
Now, given these two sets of liabilities that we know about, what is the future of MovieTown? Do you think it's still a viable concern going forward? It's a lot of investment placed in that environment.
Yeah, well, MovieTown, I mean, if you put a valuation in it in terms of, if I was to sell it, it's certainly not going to be for $10 million. All right? And if you're talking, I'd say it's not 90 million, it's more like, I just say 20 million. The MovieTown is, I think, worth a lot more than that. And we continue to develop, that is something that we'll manage, we'll deal with our banks and so on. And the business is I think a viable one if it's now that we've got through the COVID era, which, you don't just take COVID lightly. People say COVID was 4 years ago, whatever. COVID between 2020 to 2023 had a tremendous impact on many of our business, specifically ours. We're in the entertainment business, and that was the one that got the most hits in terms of all the restrictions, So we had to shut down some of the businesses. Tenants could not afford to pay, so we had to give them a lot of leeway, and so on and so forth. So we are only seeing 2022 into 23 a recovery process, and thank God we've got some better movies, and we are working to keep our costs down and continue to think positively. It's something that I would say is my legacy, and I'm not going to see it just be destroyed, just like what the perception is with all the embarrassment and so on.
Mr. Chin?
We've expanded into Guyana because of the Streets of the World issue, where the lands behind us was not granted, and we had to find alternative sources to invest and to continue to grow. And Guyana, we've changed the same way we've changed the landscape in Trinidad, but with entertainment and places like that. We've done the same thing in Guyana, and it's doing pretty well over there now.
Mr. Chin, just for clarity, with the decision of Justice Honeywell, who left it up to the tenants to decide who they must pay, has that been rectified? Has that situation been rectified?
Well, as I said, the port continues to not breach the requirements in that order. And the tenants have been told you are not to deal with the port, and same way the port has been told you're not to deal with the tenants, no contact, no communication, and all rents are to be paid to the landlord, meaning Trinbago, all right? What they also have been told not to do, and which they are continuing to breach it, is to interfere with the activities and the operations of MovieTown. They're telling me I can't come into my office. Or now they've changed it back to, okay, come at 8 o'clock in the morning and leave at 4. I said, but MovieTown runs right through the night. We have weddings, we have conferences, we have people who have made bookings a year ago. I mean, what are you trying to do? And they're continuing to occupy the offices and not allow my staff the freedom to do what they have to do. So today I'm meeting with the police to ask them, well, here, what is good? You get an order, and it's not being taken seriously.
So you're saying the port is still occupying your offices at Innovators Bay?
Yes, and this is what I have now returned, and I said I'm going to deal with it because you are in breach of the order given by Justice Honeywell, who didn't want to vary and say, well, these are what
they're occupying offices and doing what exactly?
Just sitting down with guards outside and telling us, well, you have to leave or you can't come in and things like that, and sleeping on our sofas in the banquet hall and preventing people from coming in to take a walk around, see if they want to book the venue. So that to me, that means...
So they're interacting with your clients and customers, potential customers?
Yeah, well, if you have bodyguards sitting down outside your door, outside your office, and then telling me I can only come into the office at 8 o'clock in the morning and leave at 4. And then if you don't leave, they're going to throw you out. I said, well, I don't understand.
But isn't part of the court order, according to you, non-interference in the operations and the management of the entity?
Yeah.
What I'm not understanding, Mr. Chin, though, is that you would have attorneys, and if an order is in breach, why aren't your attorneys activating that the order is being breached and taking it back to court?
Well, this is exactly, they tried to go back to court on Saturday to ask Honeywell if she could make that variation to say, listen, operations mean X and Y. You cannot be doing what you're doing. But she decided to defer to Justice Kangaloo, who is supposed to come back into the country by Friday and have the court hearing to deal with that and to deal with the substantive issues also. So this is what makes me understand, well, what is the use of this law? I mean, it's there in black and white. It's Queen's English, or King's English, and yet the court continues to defy the order. So
It's a scandal.
it's in contempt, and therefore that's a criminal action. The police say, well, it's a civil matter, so they don't want to get involved. I said, but it's not a civil matter. You have to, the order is the law, and you have to follow the law. So as I said, I'm meeting with them at 10 o'clock this morning.
Well, we hope to get an update tomorrow. Mr. Chin, thank you for taking time to talk to us this morning.